Hello again, everyone. Captain Foley and Samuel Calkins, the Trekyards team, is back again for another briefing.
Guys, hello.
For another briefing with one of our ever-expanding special guest star team. So today with us, we have Mr. Josh Spencer. Hi, Josh.
Captain, Commander.
And today we're going to be talking about some much-loved Star Trek from the past. That being the totally awesome FASA and Starfleet Battles turn-based games that many of our viewing audience grew up with over the Star Trek barren years, before and after the motion picture, and before all this internet awesomeness. So let's get to it.
So Josh, as someone who was brought up on the TNG DS9 Voyager era, I never really heard about FASA or Starfleet Battles growing up. I've heard maybe the name mentioned, but I didn't know what they were, apart from a Star Trek game, but obviously there was lots of sort of video games in my time, so it wasn't until I met Stuart here that, well, put it this way, the first time we met about the show anyway, he told me about it. He informed me, he made me learn and understand, and he kept saying how important it was, which is awesome. So I've been forced to learn. But can you just briefly explain to people who don't know and haven't got a Stuart telling them every day what FASA is? What is FASA? What is Starfleet Battles? And give us a brief explanation of what is it.
And, just to go jump in, just the differences between the two, between FASA and Starfleet Battles, because they are unique.
They certainly are. I'll start with Starfleet Battles. Both of them are tactical starship combat games. Starfleet Battles is based upon the Starfleet Technical Manual, which was published by Franz Joseph in 1975. And they did not have the actual license or official blessing from Paramount to use any of the motion picture material. That's why you see the ships such as the Federation-class Dreadnought, the Saladin-class destroyer, the Ptolemy-class fleet tugs in the game. It's also why you only see the flathead Klingons as originally presented on the original series by John Colicos, and I forget the other two guys, but no one with the ridged foreheads. On the other hand, FASA was the actual licensed product through Paramount up until the Next Generation Character Supplement. That's why they got to use any material from the motion pictures. They also included material from John M. Ford's, to me, a very pivotal novel called The Final Reflection, which went into Klingon culture in great detail. We really ran into that, and I was glad to be a continuity editor when they created that character supplement.
I mean, you say they're games, video games? Because that sounds like a bit early for a video game. What sort of game are you talking about here?
No, these were board games. You had hex maps. You put your miniatures on there, and you move your ships, and you got to do a lot of fun with them.
Yeah, they came with a small hex, and you got little cardboard counters with the ship's silhouette on it. And then you could get mega hex, which were bigger, with detailed pictures of the ships. And then on the mega hex, you could also put on the Starfleet Battles miniatures, because they're hex-shaped bottoms. So
Monopoly, eat your heart out.
Exactly.
Cool.
So, now I know you worked on both game systems over the years, and from what you said, very few people can actually claim that. So that's very cool. Can you tell us a little bit how you became involved with both Starfleet Battles and FASA, and then briefly what you contributed to each one?
Absolutely. I first got involved with Starfleet Battles in the late 1970s. I played it with some friends in Chicago, pretty much right from the get-go. The original cover was this really cheesy-looking painting by someone called Bellflower Did It. That's what it was. The signature was in the lower right-hand corner of the box. So that's what I always remember. But after seeing the Hydrons and the Lyrans added to the game, I eventually contacted Steve Cole, who ran the game back then as part of the Amarillo Design Bureau. I expressed to him my desire to create a race that learned from all the others, and that's how the ISC was created. Eventually, I became because of the contributions I made not only to that, but to designing other ships and other tactics for Starfleet Battles. I became a member of the Starfleet Battles Rules Committee, and that was not too long after the ISC came into being. Eventually, I had to step down from that position in 1984 because of some medical issues. Then eventually I moved to Chicago in 1985. I met up with Forrest Brown and toured the FASA facilities on West Van Buren Street. It's kind of in the industrial district just west of downtown. I told him about my Starfleet Battles experience, and he asked me if I wanted to work as an outside consultant for the FASA system. I said, sure. So I remained with FASA until I left Chicago in 1989.
Cool. And so what did you design for Starfleet Battles specifically?
For Starfleet Battles, it was the Interstellar Concordium as a race. And then for other ships, for other races, included the Klingon F5L frigate leader, where I slapped a few phaser ones onto the ship and made it a lot better ship and a more potent enemy for ships of their class.
Now, phaser ones for people that don't know are powerful phasers.
Right,
they're the standard phasers. Yeah,
they're the standard phasers equivalent to the ones aboard the Constitution class heavy cruiser.
Yeah. So, and then for FASA, what did you contribute to that?
Well, in addition to being the continuity editor on the Klingon character supplement, I designed a set series of ships that worked along the lines of the Warp 10 Navy concept. One of the biggest deficiencies in the Federation fleet was their inability, in my opinion, to respond to hot spots, trouble areas. Get the ships there and get them to either show the flag or fight. So I came up with the Warp 10 Navy concepts, and it was based on the Constitution class refits from the motion picture. It's like, if this particular ship can have it, why can't every other ship? So the first ship I designed was actually the Charger class destroyer, where I took a Remora class escort, put more powerful phasers, and added photon torpedoes to it to give it that destroyer punch, which it really, really needed.
Now, I also remember you mentioning that for Starfleet Battles, you created the plasmatic pulsar device.
That sounds cool.
Named after a prominent punk rock group of the time, Wendy O. Williams and the Plasmatics. Here's how the plasmatic pulsar device works. The firing ship fires a carrier wave at the target vessel. Then, once the carrier wave is locked onto that target, it then delivers up to 4 plasma bolt pulses onto the target vessel, which causes splash damage not only on the target shield, but also the 2 adjacent shields as well. It caused some really hectic damage, and if you use the leaky shields rule, it would make life hell for whoever got hit by a plasmatic pulsar device.
And for the leaky shields rule, I'll get into that too. You have your shields like 25 boxes on the SSD, which is the
Super Star Destroyer, yeah.
No.
Systems display, yeah.
It's the ship system display, which shows all your systems in boxes. So as you get hit, you tick off however many damage points you get. The leaky shields rule, even if you have 25 full on your shield, every fourth hit is an internal hit. So you have to roll for get a bridge damage or a tractor beam, phase or something like that. So every 4th hit is internal damage. It makes the game way more interesting. Now, my brother Steve and I have played Starfleet Battles for years and continue to do so on a fairly regular basis. So I really must say it's rather exciting to be talking to someone who's actually designed and developed some of the iconic Starfleet Battles ships, and especially the ISC as a whole race, as they're one of my favorite races to play in the game. Can you give us a quick background on the ISC, like kind of their history and why they are the way they are, since you're basically the god who created them?
Well, I guess that makes me the king of the universe as the ISC, doesn't it? That's what everyone calls the great bird of the galaxy. The ISC consists of 5 races. You have the Veltressi, who are the humanoid leaders with psionic abilities. Then there's the Corlevalar, who are the felinoid scouts in the infantry. The Pronolites, who are the reptilian starship and armored crew members. The Canavians are the technicians and the scientists, and they are humanoids who breathe a chlorine atmosphere. And finally, there are the Rovilians, who are intelligent dolphin cetaceans who build the ships. Their main weapon...
I've got to interrupt that. It sounds like the Xindi must have been slightly based on this, because that sounds kind of one-to-one almost. That's incredible, actually. Awesome.
Yeah, it seems like they took your idea and just Xindied it up.
Yeah, which works. Actually makes me... They could be the precursors, or the Xindi could be the precursors. Is Xindi the precursors? There you go. No, I don't know. I don't know. That's stupid. Yeah.
Mainly the ISC territory is barren except for those 5 planets. When they first encountered the Starfleet Battles races, they found the Romulans and the Gorns fighting each other, on the eastern edge of their territory, which was the western edge of the ISE territory, where they had expanded to. And when they went back to their parliament in their capital, they were shocked. It's like, how can these people fight? They're insane. They're fighting wars. It's like, well, we got to do something about that. And that's when they developed their fleet to go and learn about the other races and find out what makes them tick. That's why their weapons are the way they are. And one of the few features which really surprised the heck out of the other races was that when the ISC had to retreat from a battle, they had rear-firing plasma F torpedoes to slow them down, to let them get away.
And what was the principal lineup of ISC ships that you had created for them?
The first ship I designed was the Star Cruiser, which was the equivalent of the heavy cruiser. It had 2 plasmatic pulsar devices, 2 plasma S's, and then a number of phaser 1s and phaser 3s for point difference, and of course 2 rear-firing plasma F torpedoes. Then the next one was the logical evolution into the flagship cruiser, which is the command cruiser. Had the same basic setup as the Star Cruiser, except it had the flag bridge and slightly stronger shields. Next were the destroyers. Originally, I designed them with 3 plasma Fs, and the committee looked at that. It's like, that's too powerful. Let's give that to the Gorns. It's like, okay, I'm cool with that. And then eventually the frigate was also developed in the fast patrol ships, and then on the other end of the spectrum there was the dreadnought. That was the main basic lineup of the ISC when I originally created them in 1982.
Okay, so out of all the things you've created for these games, what are some of your favorites and why? What did you enjoy working on the most, and maybe what was the most challenging thing for you?
The most challenging thing when I was designing the ISC, and this is an overall challenge, was actually figuring out how the PPD, or the plasmatic pulsar device, was supposed to work. Originally, it was a plasma bolt weapon, one shot, 40 points of damage on that main shield, bam, you were done. But Steve took a look at that, and it's like, we got to make it a little bit more interesting. And he actually came up with the carrier wave, and then shoving the 4 plasma pulses down that carrier wave to hit the ship and cause the splash damage. And I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. And then that's at least that was something that was solved by teamwork, which I prize highly, no matter what I do in the gaming world or the professional world. In Starfleet Battles, I really liked the Federation New Light Cruiser, the NCL. I really hated the light cruiser, the original light cruiser, where they took a sublight light cruiser, stuck some warp engines on it, and said, okay, that's the light cruiser. It looked really funky, really wedge-shaped. If you ever saw an SFB miniature on that. So, and the new light cruiser was so efficient, I always thought of it as the equivalent of the fastest Reliant class cruiser, which we all know to be the Miranda class. Mm-hmm. And I'll bet you dollars to donuts that Stuart, you probably played with a Reliant miniature in place of the NCL.
Absolutely, yes, I did.
Yeah. Now for the Klingons, I really liked FASA's D10. It had the D7 boom on it, but it had a really wild-looking wedge shape to it, and it reminded me of the original design I had for the ISC.
One of the things my brother and I always used to say while playing the game, it would be really great to have a computer game version of it, which eventually came around with the development of Starfleet Command for the PC by the talented people over at Interplay.
Yeah,
of course, Starfleet Command Volume 2, Empires at War, I thought was a far superior game and one of the best Starship Simulator games to date. And with the addition of a patch you could install, you could actually have any era, so you could have all the Starfleet battle ships all the way up to next generation, which was really cool.
In the Star Trek universe, let's move away from FASA and all this jazz. Out of everything, what would you say your favorite race was? And if you were designing today for these games, say, what would you do for that race?
The feds are the feds. Okay, we all know that's what Star Trek is based around. Yeah. But if I had my druthers, and if I was able to design something for the Star Trek universe, I would love to design ships for the Romulans and the Cardassians. I'd have to look more into learning more about the Cardassian culture and how they think and then adapting whether they're able to adapt certain technologies from other races onto their ships.
Cool. Okay, so one last thing before we get going here. In earlier conversations with you, you have said that you played paintball with Mr. William Shatner. Can you tell us a little about how that came to be, and how was it being in a battle with Kirk himself? Did you get a double axe handle to the back of the head or anything?
Nope,
or a drop kick?
Nope, he didn't do any of that. But God, it was fun. Forrest Brown eventually went into paintball after he left FASA. From what I remember, he helped found Challenge Park Extreme in Joliet, Illinois. Back in 2002, he asked me, at the time he was the manager of the facility, and he asked me if I wanted to come down and play paintball with a Shat in a charity event, which involved 1,200 players. I said, hell yes. So he said, come on down, bring your camera. You don't have to be, participant, an actual participant. You just go around, take pictures of these guys in action. And he actually paid for my admission fee, which for everybody else was $150. So he said, come on down, it's free. So I was actually a combat photographer chronicling the event. Of course, I hung around.
War correspondent.
War correspondent, exactly. I hung around the feds, of course, and I got some classic photos of Admiral Kirk negotiating with the Klingons, who was led by a Chicago disc jockey named Mancow Muller. He is to Chicago what Howard Stern is to New York City.
Interesting.
And also some really fantastic photos where Kirk is speaking to his troops and exhorting them to keep going and reach victory. And a couple of those was actually where he was on top of a paintball tank, and it reminded me so of Boris Yeltsin doing the same thing during the 1991 crisis in the Soviet Union. And I kid you not, he really did that. So yeah, it was, even though I wasn't actually shooting at other guys, and yeah, I got shot at because I was, combat photographer, war correspondent. You can't get that message get out because they're losing. So yeah, it was still very, very exhilarating, the overall experience. I would love to do something like that again, but things like that take time.
That's very cool.
Sounds fun.
Yes, indeed.
Well, everyone, there you have it. Some behind the scenes of the best Star Trek gaming ever, in my opinion. True classics. I could literally talk forever about these games.
I'm sure you could.
It was a pure delight to speak to someone who worked on and developed something that provided myself and my brother with so much enjoyment and frustration at times over the years. Josh, you were responsible for some of me and my brother's best bonding moments. And I thank you very much for that. It's been an honor to have you here today speaking with us, so thank you for joining us. We, of course, have many other episodes lined up with you to visit and chat with you about some of your ships and weapons designs. And until then, guys, go dust off your Starfleet battles and play away. This is Captain Foley, Samuel Calkins, and Josh Spencer signing off until next time. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.